All right. Good evening, everyone. I am so glad that you could join us. I'm sure we'll probably have some other people joining, and hopefully nobody else is having issues because Utah is actually getting snow today. Wow, what an amazing thing. We haven't really had much. My name is Sarah Davenport Smith, and I am the founder and managing director of UC3. And this webinar is primarily to update everybody on the bills we've been following. We are now more than halfway through the session, and we want to let you know what we're seeing, the trends we're seeing, and what we're suggesting, and what you can actually do with everything that is going on. So with that, I want to share my screen with you guys. This is going to be, all right. You guys see that all right? Looks like the bill summary. Okay. So this is our updated bill summary that I've been taking to the Capitol and sharing with all of our legislators. Let me come up to the very top here. We have several bills. We have a lot of bills that we're following. And anyways, yeah, just when you join, if you can mute yourself, that'd be great. And we will open it up for questions later, so don't worry. Anyways, we have one bill, and actually there was one other one that we're actually happy about that has a full-on green light. I don't want to be complete Debbie Downers, but remember what we do with UC3 is we analyze all of our bills through the lens of our state and federal constitutions, along with case law. And so all of the bills that we highlight, these are primarily focused all on housing. So anything to do with housing, zoning, planning, policies, those sorts of things. Things that directly affect municipalities. Anyway, so like this first bill, HB 17, we actually gave it the green light, and we actually like that it actually gives a few more ways for cities to oversee what's going on in different political subdivisions that are within the cities, like PIDs, for example. Anyways, that one is actually not a bad one. But now you start getting into some of the other ones that we definitely have amendments recommended. Let me get to some of the ones that are a little bit more pertinent. So HB 38, this has a substitute on it. And this one we've definitely given the yellow light. Now, I want to encourage you guys that just because something has a yellow light or even a red light or a green light, remember that the analysis we've done for these bills, they've been looked at individually. Later on, I'm going to talk to you about the cumulative analysis that we've done on all of them. So keep that in mind as we're going through each one of these individual bills. HB 32, this is one of Representative Dunnigan's bills, and it deals primarily with county government amendments. And so, again, we flagged it because of Article 11 and Article 6, and some possible multi-subject issues, but more county governance implications. Granted, counties are creatures of statute, and so our state legislature can absolutely change around the way things work within county governance, but it can't, they have to do it within reason. And anyways, it definitely gives a state override of county processes. So I want you to keep that in mind, because there's a lot of these that either force coordination with the state, or the state takes over, maybe a small portion of this or that. So just keep that in mind as we get to the cumulative analysis part. And we do recommend that there are amendments. Pretty much every single one of these has an amendment, and we do have these amendments. So we always tell the legislators that, hey, we don't want you to think that we're just complaining that we have something that we want to tell you that's wrong, but we actually have amendments to help make them better and help align with the Constitution and protect our local government rights. We listed one water rights. I think we only have one water rights amendments bill, but there are several water bills here during this session right now that are actually being considered. And yes, those do have a direct effect on local government operations for sure. But we decided not to get too in the weeds on the water side. Just know that overall, with the water bills, we're seeing the same thing as far as the state taking a little bit more authority here and a little bit more authority there. And so in general, what I'm going to show you later on with the cumulative analysis for the housing policies, we're seeing the same thing with the water policies as well. This one, construction code amendments. Now, we see this every year. I will tell you, if any of you are familiar with the international code, the ICC, anyways, they do codes for every single state. Every single state pretty much in the nation uses the ICC, the International Code Council. Anyways, it's an independent third-party private organization that writes the codes for every single one of like your construction, fire, you name it, pretty much anything that has to do with building things. Now, there's a good thing that it's consistent throughout the United States, but there are some questions that we have as far as is it proper for our code to be written by a third party and then simply adopted by the state legislature? And I have some friends who are in the city, and actually is the city of Draper. And anyways, they're with the building code enforcement section in the city of Draper. And I said, so what do you think? And he said, well, in general, we see good updates with the ICC updates. He said, however, it is a little concerning. Why don't we have our own people doing the code updates so that there's more accountability? And that's one of those constitutional ideas that we do always raise as a concern is, well, if you're eliminating that accountability for the legislators, for elected officials, and to the voters, because ultimately, it's the people who are affected by the laws. So we want to make sure that there's enough accountability there. And so that's one of the reasons, big reason why we flag that as a red light. But it does alter different requirements within municipalities. HB 68, Representative Roberts' bill, substitute number 3. This one has been one of our focuses definitely for this year. I spoke against it in committee. Now, granted, one of the things that Representative Roberts has been letting everybody know, he's done a good job of reaching out to a lot of different folks. He's let them know that his main goal for this particular bill was to reorganize everything related to housing policy under one code, one section of code. That's it. And so that doesn't sound like a bad idea, a restructuring. However, when you restructure a bill, and especially since this bill, HB 68, was in particular, it was adding a new position and new authority in that position to basically, oversee everything related to housing. And that in itself is new code. It's new code. And so one of the things that has said federal bill, and actually it's not. It's not policy neutral. It does create new policy. But again, what I want you to really grab a hold of is not necessarily what these bills are doing individually, but what they're doing collectively. Okay. Here's definitely another bill that we have had some issues with. This is HB 184 for substitute. This is one of Representative Ward's bills. This one makes, or basically forces, a municipality to, how's that phrase go? Like, call for the question, right? Call for the question. So when it comes to ADUs, I don't know how many cities, this might be a good thing for us to look up, but how many cities and counties do allow ADUs, accessory dwelling units, as permitted uses? Well, apparently there are not enough, because this bill in particular says, basically gives the municipality a time limit. Within 30 days, you have to either confirm or deny that an ADU can be a permitted use. And if you don't do it within 30 days, then it automatically becomes a permitted use. And then you get to go ahead and review the application and all that stuff. Zoning by default is kind of what it is. That doesn't sit well with the Constitution. So you definitely need to give your municipalities the right, especially cities, definitely need to give them the right to say yes or no, and it's not by default. And if it takes a little more than 30 days, then they need to be able to do that. It should be done in a timely manner, we'll say that much. But anyways, I think it's an interesting tension that I've been noticing at the state legislature. You have see things pass, and they definitely have their way of thinking about things. And so anyways, this is a way to push ADUs, push ADU approval on the cities. Now, granted, it doesn't force approval. And well, there unfortunately is another bill that does force approval of ADUs on cities. But again, like the other ones, we do have an amendment for this. And I did sit down and have a conversation with Representative Ward about this, and he said he would be open to amending it. So we'll see what happens. Again, House Bill 212, county formation amendments. This has to do more with election and boundary impacts on counties. So, where they, how they do their elections and their particular boundaries. And we flagged this again as yellow, and, it's unfunded mandate. Actually, there is a potential for that, which no municipality likes to hear that word. It is one of the worst things that you can tell a municipality. It's like, oh, great. Now what do we get to do, right? We have to raise fees or taxes somehow to pay for this mandate that's coming down from the state, and nobody likes that. Here's another one, actually, too, by Representative Tusher, HB 239, local land use amendments. Definitely flag this as yellow. There's a prohibition on incorporation for this one and restricted annexation discretion. And, that's something that's all typically always been within the purview of a municipality to choose where they annex, and there's a process laid out for that. Normally, you go through a petition process. Somebody petitions to annex into the city, and anyways, this kind of limits that, and there is there's a county interaction with this as well. So anyways, it's doing a little bit to blur the lines as well between county, city government. And so this one actually, the unfunded mandate is most likely on the county because they have to provide the support for it. But anyways, we do have an amendment for this one as well. Going down, HB 457, this is another one of Representative Dunnigan's bills, again dealing with annexations. This one is the automatic annexation without a petition. So this is dealing with the like the donut holes in counties, so you'll see a county surrounding a particular area, and that little area is still unincorporated by any city or county, or I should say city at all, but you have cities surrounding it. And this basically says, well, we're going to automatically annex this into the surrounding city. And if there's multiple cities, then it lays out a bit of a process for that. Not totally clear on the process for that, but again, local government impact. Well, cities would gain territory and counties would lose it. And with it being automatic, and I believe the date was the first part of 2027 was when this automatic annexation would happen. So we have an issue with cities possibly dealing with service burdens. So you have that. But again, this is going around the annexation process. This is not what you traditionally do. Another bill is by Representative Roberts. He's got quite a lot that we are following this session. HB 475, second substitute, planning, development, planning, and coordination amendments. We have a red light on this one. This is, I'm just saying, yes, definitely indirect interference with municipal zoning authority. And again, we're referring to Article 11, Section 5 of our Constitution. And it's through incentive-based leverage. So we're talking about funding here. There's forced coordination with the state. And of course, conditional participation. Basically, if you want to do this, then you gotta do this. If you want this set of funding, then you've got to do this. And it may eventually create operational burdens. We're trying to be fairly generous here, but we're definitely saying that it needs an amendment, and we would recommend amending or rejecting this one for sure. Another one that we're looking at is HB 477 by Representative Copert. This one is land use regulations, and we have a red light on this. Again, this was the other ADU bill that I was telling you about, and this one, it just straight up says you get to accept ADUs, period. That's it. That's all. And of course, there's some due process exposures, and it overrides zoning discretion. It limits permit enforcement authority. There is some analysis in this bill that basically you couldn't dictate parking setbacks and those sorts of things. Anyways, it's not right for the state to come in and say a one size fits all approach, because one size doesn't fit all. Each one of our cities and towns and counties are all different and unique for a good reason. So, and this also assumes that all of their solutions they work. And I don't know if they really will, if they're actually some of the ones that are in place right now. The analysis we've been doing doesn't show that it's really getting to what they're looking for. One of the other bills we're following, HB 492, Representative Roberts, another one of his transportation infrastructure and housing amendments. We're giving it a yellow light again. Remember, we're just analyzing these bills individually by themselves. This does a lot for revenue reallocation and bond increases, but this bill creates a transportation infrastructure and housing like loan fund for municipalities. So participation is voluntary, however, the incentive is there if you need to fund critical infrastructure, which I think, as we all know, and we can all agree that cities and towns, counties, they're always in need of additional funding to help with their infrastructure needs because it's expensive. And I have not come across any municipality who's been able to fund their infrastructure needs completely on their own, like no grant, no loan, no nothing, just everything done within their own budgetary means. It's unfortunately, it's just the way it works right now. So voluntary participation, however, there's a lot of questions because there's a lot of requirements in here that if you want this loan, if you want this money, then you have to comply with this. You have to make sure that your city plan is totally in compliance with the moderate income housing plan and other things. So it's we don't like the coercive tactic. However, it's still voluntary, and so that's why we just gave it a yellow light. But again, look at everything together. We want you guys to look at everything together, and we want our legislators to look at everything together as well. Another bill by Representative Roberts, HB 507, State Coordination of Regional and Local Economic Development Project Amendments. Again, we gave this a yellow light. It's giving the counties a zone-based tax authority. So this is for any of the economic development type projects where they've actually created zones. And this is definitely one of those where you have the ability for the county to step in and actually impose something within a city. And in this case, it would be a tax. Granted, it would only be allowed in that particular zone, but in that particular zone, you are going to see consumers and businesses who operate in there pay more in transaction-based taxes because of this additional tax that the county was able to put on. So it's and there's not in this bill, there wasn't really a meaningful way for a municipality to say, hey, whoa, can we talk about this, county, before you place this tax in our area? So that's, yeah, you're overriding local government authority there. We have this bill highlighted, Senate Bill 19. This is Senator Weiler. And actually, I think that's Representative Wilcox. Anyways, digital evidence amendments. Now, I have talked with Senator Weiler about this, and this is for our police. And if any of you are familiar with our local police departments, more and more they have to deal with digital evidence, right? They've got to crack into somebody's cell phone or computer or something like that. And we only have one lab currently right now, and it happens to be in Salt Lake City. And anyways, there's our biggest complaint with this is that it was a pretty big unfunded mandate, and it did go through. It did go through. We still have some recommendations. Um, it went through the Senate, and so it is over at the House right now. We still have some recommendations to help with the funding mechanism, because this could be pretty steep for some of our more rural areas, like some of our rural counties, for example. The fiscal analysis that we did on this one in particular uh, guesstimated that for a rural county, it could be equal to one whole FTE, which one full-time employee position. So that's no small potatoes for I'm just thinking of our smaller counties like Paiute and Wayne County and such. Um, Senate Bill 39, investment zone amendments. This we have a big red light on. It's a statutory reallocation of local authority. It really constrains local decision making. And again, this goes along with all of our, the different investment zones that we do have, like the HTRZs and the first home buyer and those ones. Um, anyways, we don't think that it should move forward. It is going forward through the Senate, and I believe it's awaiting the House right now. Um, Property tax rates amendment, Senate Bill 97, Senator McKay. We have this flagged as a yellow light because it's more about, again, it's the state kind of coming in and really restructuring a lot of things. And it's the way that we analyzed it, it's a severe constraint on budgeting, reserves, and capital planning. And so we're saying, hey, you still gotta give some discretion. I mean, this is why there are, you know, lanes. Everybody stays in their lane because everybody has got their own unique situations. And so, one city, one county doesn't look like the other. And so we still need to give the state needs to give that flexibility. But where the state can come in and say, you need to do this, they align with the Constitution and they make sure that cities and counties and towns are doing things. Let's see, on hold, third reading. Senate bills. Thank you. Thanks, Bernadette. Okay, she let me know that Senate Bill 39 is on third reading right now in the House. So no, for the Senate. Sorry. No, for the House. Anyways, so it's about ready to go through, you guys. Um, anyways, but with Senate Bill 97, yeah, we do have an amendment for that one. And again, trying to be helpful and not just raising the red flag. Senate Bill 165, this is by Senator Fillmore, and it's called the Economic Mobility Initiative. So this one is basically trying to create these areas and zones. Again, this has to do with housing policies and such. But again, we look at where it's trying to concentrate the authority and the accountability. It's not the accountability to the voters, to their representatives, their representative elected officials. And also it puts a heightened risk for litigation on local municipalities. So we're that one we don't like at all. Senate Bill 221 for substitute Senator Harper. This one has the HRZ amendments. So it has mandatory fiscal participation, zoning freeze that limits home rule, and automatic development within the automatic development right within the counties. And so there's mandatory tax increment participation, which affects local revenue streams. And, we're flagging this as yellow. Again, the the legislature has the right to create these zones, and they have the right to change what's going on in these zones. Um, but is it fully aligning with the Constitution and also with the intent of the Constitution? One thing I like to remind people is that when you look at the constitutions, both of them, our state and our federal constitutions, you need to read them as a whole and remember that each article is backed up by the other. There's a reason why it's laid out the way it is. And so, again, we're not a huge fan of this one, but we do have amendments recommended for this. This one, so Community Reinvestment Agency amendments, actually Senate Bill 228 for substitute. This one isn't so bad. Actually, it gives it simply gives more, I shouldn't say more, but it changes the authority for the community reinvestment agencies. So this is more about the community reinvestment agencies, and it brings more accountability to them on behalf of local governments and taxpayers. And so it's not bad. There's a little tweak that we'd like to see, and hopefully we might be able to get that through. We just would like to see some non-retroactivity language added just to make sure that it doesn't affect any projects that any municipalities might have with any of these community reinvestment agencies. So we gotta just be consistent. Senate Bill 278 by Senator Stevenson, Point of the Mountain Land Authority modification. So this is specifically for Point of the Mountain and, of course, affecting the city of Draper. So this one, has some potential bond impairments. And, if tax changes are applied retroactively, that's bad. Pre-zoning authority should be clarified, and the tax distribution is actually adjusted with this. It needs some clarification, and again, we have those suggestions. And remember, like I said, we got to look at what all these bills are doing collectively. Okay, so we're almost through. Just a couple more to go through. Senate Bill 284, again by Senator Fillmore, local land use modifications. So this one, it limits discretionary denial authority. And so this, having talked with actually like the was it the property rights group that is up there, that they're primarily represented by developers. I spoke with a representative from the Home Builders Association of Utah, and I can tell that this is something that they are really encouraging to go through, because basically what this says is that, okay, city, county, town, if I have a project that meets all of your requirements within the code, then you have to approve this project. You have to approve it. And you can't do like a special development agreement on the side or make changes midway through the project. Like, it is what it is and it's approved. There you go. So, and there is something on there as well, or within that bill, that said you can't deny for political reasons. And That's not defined. So I don't know what that means. So we would like to know what Senator Fillmore was looking for when he said you can't deny for political reasons, because that's very subjective. And when you're writing code, when you're writing statute, you need to make sure that you're very specific so that there's no questions. Um, and then the last one that we're looking at is one of the House resolutions. This is House Resolution 6 by Representative White. And this is House resolutions. No, they're not binding law. They're not policies themselves, but they dictate policy. And last session, I believe it was HJR House Joint Resolution 14, they actually, that law or that resolution actually dictated all of the housing policies that we're seeing this session. It talked about streamlining things, it talked about consolidation, and again, it brought in the need for housing supply and affordability and on and on. And anyways, this HCR 6 does the same similar thing. And what it does, the message that it gives, um, it signals future statutory preemption by the state and an indirect erosion of home rule, and definitely future mandatory coordination and reporting. And will there be unfunded mandates? I'm sure there will. And we recommended amendments for that one. Okay, now here's the fun part. This is what I really want you guys to see. And I want to kind of go through this sort of quickly. And by the way, we will send this out to you guys after we're done with this webinar. But here it is, this trend category and the bills included and the collective constitutional impact. So I'm just going to quickly go through what we're seeing, the trends. State centralization of zoning authority, and we list some of the bills. State-controlled development incentive structures. There we go. State-linked housing and infrastructure financing, right? Kind of the carrot that is backed up with the stick. Regional tax authority expansion. And, I think a really good thing to look at would be what exactly is the tax burden looking like for Utahns in general? Because I think this is important for especially local municipalities to consider, because the first person that most likely the citizens will blame if their tax bill goes way up, they're probably going to look at you and say, what did you do? And you should be able to let them know, actually, that wasn't us, or maybe just a little bit, but only because we were forced to. Anyways, mandatory fiscal participation and revenue reallocation, and then also administrative reclassification of administrative acts. So this reframing zoning decisions from discretionary acts into like straight up approvals, kind of like the ADU ones that we went over. And so this is what we also end with, just in general guidance over what we're seeing. Like, okay, you've just seen everything in the table. Let me break it down for you. We're seeing a huge statutory restructuring of all these things that I just mentioned, and it's something that you have to look at very, very seriously. When you look at these bills together, they gradually convert cities and counties and towns from those sovereign constitutional actors. I mean, they're not totally sovereign, but Utah really has had a long history of being a very strong home rule state, which means that within at least your local cities, and even within the towns and the counties, but mostly the cities, that you are allowed to zone, to plan the way that your city wants without too much state interference, unless something is of statewide significance, like a highway going through your road, right? So what we're seeing is that Yeah, you're okay. Jobs for elected officials, like what our elected officials and local governments would traditionally be governing are going away. The way that these policies are leading us is the state telling all of our local governments what to do and how to do it and when to do it and how much. And we are actually asking for a review of all of our structural housing, our housing related statutes adopted at least since 2023. We're asking for a temporary pause on additional zoning preemption legislation. I would just say all housing policies in general, a reaffirmation of Article 11, our local government municipal home rule principles, and clear guardrails preventing fiscal leverage so that, like what we talked about earlier, all cities, towns, counties, they need money for their infrastructure. And that is definitely one of the leverages that our state government is using to get compliance with these new laws. So we remain steadfast in believing that Utah's constitutional framework is strongest and works best when governance is closest to the people. And with that, I will stop share. Well, anyways, I will let you guys go ahead and unmute if you'd like. And if you have any questions, you are free to ask your questions, or if you have any comments.
Sarah, this is Bob Lind in Far West. I do
Hi, Rob.
I do have a question for you.
Go
House
ahead.
Bill 68.
Yes.
I was reading about some of the federal legislation that's almost equivalent to this. Is this the state's attempt to align with the federal government's desirements, or am I reading too much into it?
Well, I haven't read federal legislation that links to this. And if you want to send it to me, I would be happy to look through that. But it's not uncommon that states will try to align with the federal government on certain things. Um, it could be, but having not read the particular piece of federal legislation, I'm not entirely able to say. But like I said, HB 68 does a lot to consolidate and centralize housing, zoning, planning authority with the state. And I kind of look, I think our team kind of looks at HB 68 as kind of the big initiator for that this year, and just kind of it's bringing up a lot of things they were trying to do the past couple of years, and then all the different recodifications that they've done since last year and some of the ones they're doing this year. It's really tying it all together with a nice bow.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting how you've been isolating and finding things that give more power and authority back to the or to the state,
Hmm.
and that just seems like that's a desirement on behalf of the state.
Yes, it definitely is. Just like we went over at the very end with the cumulative analysis, and
Right.
that's something that I do have to say every time that I go up to the legislature. I'm normally there once or twice a week, sometimes more. And when I meet with legislators, I've been showing them this cumulative analysis, and they're very appreciative of it because it's not something that they're aware of. Most of the time, they don't get to see what the overall effects are of all the policies they passed until after the damage has been done. And so we're really trying to do our best to introduce this idea to them. It's new. Like I said, nobody else has introduced this to them before. And we're hoping that it's making an effect. I do know that when the House voted on HB 68, that there were a good, what I think 10, Bernadette, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there were 10 who voted specifically no. There were several who were absent, um, but those were a lot of them, the ones we had talked with, and they had seen the collective analysis and they'd heard that from us. And so I remember Mike Peterson, Representative Mike Peterson, actually spoke up and said, I don't believe that this is the direction that our citizens want us to go. And we we hope others follow his lead with that.
Right.
If you're speaking to HB 68, we had 55 yay votes and 13 nay votes, which, as you said,
13.
Mike Peterson spoke up about. And then there were 7 that were absent or not voting.
Yeah, thanks, Bernadette.
Well,
Any other?
thank you for what you're doing for us.
You're welcome. Yeah, we're happy to do that and get the word out. And we're trying to do something a little bit different, but ultimately what it's going to do is just solidify the lanes that everybody's supposed to stay in. I think government works best when it has really thick boundaries between each of them. So I think that's the way it was intended to be. And anyways, we're just going to keep going up there and keep using different strategies as much as we can to do what we can for our local governments this session. And the good news is that even things that pass, some of these that are not good, even if they pass this session, changes can be made. So don't lose hope. And always remember that in the world of politics and government, you win in one of two ways. You either have the money or you have the numbers. And we're making sure that we have the numbers. So we're just trying to get the word out to all of our local governments and any of the individual citizens who want to come along and support what we do. And eventually, we will definitely have a strong group of people saying, nope, let's each stay in our lane. It works much better that way.
There you go.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Anything else that you guys have maybe noticed on your end, or maybe what you've been hearing from some of the other associations you might work with? All right. Well, I will stop sharing. And like I said, we will definitely be sending this out to you guys. So you will have this updated version. And we recently sent out our very first newsletter. So I hope that you guys are getting our newsletter. If you haven't, please let us know. You can sign up through our website. Heather, is there anything else you want to let them know about connecting with us?
I was gonna say you can email me too. I sent little reminders about tonight, so if anybody just wants to respond, I can add you to the newsletter. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And we will be having another webinar in March, and we will sum up what happened during the legislative session and then what we're looking forward to when the interim begins, which April, May, probably May is usually when it starts. But things always come start preparing before that, but they take a little bit of a break. So that's good. We look forward to the break. Anyways, yeah, feel free to reach out to us with any questions that you guys have. We're happy to help. And just as we build UC3, the Utah Coalition of Cities and Counties, those of you who are coming along in the beginning, you get to tell us how we can improve, what services maybe we can provide. for you that you don't have in other from other areas. One of the requests that we did receive was, hey, would you mind, coming to our city and providing like a public workshop, completely open to the public on our state constitution and how to read that and how it applies to all the citizens and how our local governments can actually use it for their benefit. That's what it's supposed to be for. It's a great tool. Our constitutions are great tools. So, anybody have any other questions? Okay. Well, with that, I hope you guys have a great night. And I'm really glad that you got to join us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good night.
Thanks, Sarah.